welcome back, everybody. It is that Monday. It is that every other Monday.
That Monday.
Yeah, it's that Monday, not the other Monday, but that Monday.
Monday.
The only Monday that matters.
That's right, the only Monday that matters.
Right.
The one where we're all here hanging out with you guys. Looks
Boy,
like
you sound more
Stacy's
excited,
here. Do what?
Hey, Stacey. I said, try not to sound too excited. Yeah, it's Monday. Welcome to the show.
As we are here is
There's a
Monday,
loaded gun
yay.
inches from my hand. From the
All over tell. Dreadpool's here, back from the dead's here. Stacy is here. Vinny is here. Henry Got Sick is here. So we got people filtering in. We got people popping in and out. So it should be a fun show tonight.
Well, you're going to get hundreds of people coming in because I just did a live show, and I told everyone.
All of your two viewers, one of them was me, found out that we were streaming.
There are tens of us. Tens of us.
Dude, don't get carried away. One or two.
So I know everybody was kind of busy this weekend. Looks like Scepter's coming in. So Panda, what were you doing all weekend other than avoiding work, which I know you did a decent amount of because I saw you in tons of streams this weekend. You were doing anything for a distraction, it seemed like this weekend.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to test a lot of things out because I'm about to be filming a lot of episodes back to back to back because every time I film them, I have to take out this big green screen. I don't live in a very big space. So I get this 10-foot green screen out. So what I wanted to try and do is see if while I'm doing that, could I do some gameplay moving forward? And the answer is yes. To the 2 to 3 people out there, I think that's something I can do in the meantime while I'm filming. So it was a mission success, critical success. Did that make sense?
Yes.
That's pretty much what I've been doing, yeah. Green screen work and this.
No, I caught a couple of your streams this weekend. You seem to be having a good time, and the chat seemed to be having a good time. So that's always good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying my best to get more and more comfortable on camera. So that's kind of always been a struggle for me. So yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
Mike doing a Max Headroom video.
There's that girl behind him. That girl that he loves so very much.
It's. I mean, I can.
I was kind of hoping you would grill while, like, multitask. There it is.
There it is.
He can't be parted from his other wife.
Mike, I've got a question for you.
On Father's Day, when both of my women are together.
Mike, I've got a very tough question.
Is it polygamy, adultery? How does this count with a grill?
Let's say a meteor is about to hit your home. You can only grab one wife. Which one is it, Mike?
He's taking the grill.
Hold on, let me see it.
Dude, you got to eat, right? So you got to take the grill.
Hold on, let me make sure that she's not in the kitchen. Okay. It might have to be.
I'm expecting a knife to come flying in shot at any moment now. Your main and your side piece. So Sir X-Man popped into the chat as well. We need to get him back on here sometime.
Yes,
he had a pretty good time last time.
The term from The Sopranos, which I binge watched like 6 months ago. I have my wife and my guman.
I was thinking we're getting a few more people from the retro community, and we need to try to get some of them on here. I just need a better way to communicate them because I don't like DMing in Twitter in that big group DM. I find it really ineffective, and it just gets lost. And I don't think anybody uses Discord, so it's kind of hard to reach out to people. I usually just reach out to them through you because people respond to you, whereas most people just like, I think I'm like maybe accidentally muted. By many people. It's probably not an accident if I'm being honest.
Fair play.
And if I'm being fair, I may or may not have had it coming. Let's just put that out there. So, Mike, you did some streaming. You guys are experimenting with Rumble now. It seems
Yeah.
like, and the
He's
video
killing it.
looks really, really good.
Well, okay, so let's quantify killing it. I'm not pulling in, 10,000 live viewers just yet.
No, but here's what you are doing, sir. What you are doing is people like me who've been on Rumble for years, who get somewhere in the neighborhood of 0 views. You are getting hundreds of views every single live episode. So good on you, man. Congrats. That's incredible.
Well,
Yeah, I'm one of my goals this week is to start uploading some of my content onto Rumble so that it's there and get a page established because I have an account, but I don't have a page established, which is kind of weird because in YouTube land, when you establish an account, it generally just kind of gives you a page
The channel, right.
automatically.
well, and I
Rumble
think the
doesn't do
reason
that.
I think the reason is, from what I was able to gather, is your account can have multiple channels of multiple disciples. So you, instead of having a Geeks with Cash account and Geek Story account that's 2 separate channels, you could have a just,
Oh, you could have just a generic name and then multiple channels and they
right,
identify
and
individually.
own them and be able to manage them and be able to.
See, had I known that, I might have grabbed a different name, a more holistic name to manage everything.
I thought the same
but
thing.
It doesn't really matter. It'll work out regardless.
Yeah. So I got, if I were to, I don't know, start a griddle channel.
Ooh.
I could, it would be separate content from the gaming channel, but I could manage it all under my one account. So had I known now what I knew then, if I knew then what I know now, I would have picked a better username as well.
So Fastback and Born, who both popped in. Hi guys, good to see you,
brother Chris. And I think the other thing too is
EJC in the house.
We're just trying, they're trying to grow their gaming side. In YouTube, we're all small fish in a giant pond, whereas over there, I'm a potential minnow in a small pond that can grow as they dredge out the pond more, and that's what I'm shooting for. And not for nothing, I've gone back too, because you've said it, both of you have said it, and multiple other people have said the stream quality looks better over there. I have gone back and watched and put them up side by side, and I don't know what Rumble is doing.
Dude, it is absolutely it is heads and tails above what YouTube is doing.
Significantly downgrading to people under a certain amount of subscribers. It's
I noticed something when I tried to watch a video on YouTube today, where one of the options now is 1080p premium bit rate, and if you click on it, it tries to make you buy YouTube Premium. So they're going to charge you for that.
You can always go in and change your settings. You can change your resolution, but by default, the resolution that it defaults to in YouTube is 480. It always defaults on 480 if you go auto. Like every single time. You have to manually go change it. I have a Rumble account, Born. I'm going to try to set up a channel this week.
I subscribe to you.
And I'm going to try to make the channel look the same as it looks pretty much here, as far as like the banner and everything as close to it as I can get, because I don't see any reason to change the branding on it. I like the branding that I have now.
Geek Story, it's awesome.
I just want to get the content up there, because overall, from what I've seen from Rumble, while it's a little harder to search for certain things, I like a lot of the ideas that they're throwing out there as far as the layout goes. So I think it's promising. So yeah, I'm not going to move away from YouTube right now. I'm still kind of sort of growing on YouTube. YouTube's weird. Like I'll gain people and then I'll lose people at the same rate. YouTube's just weird. It just kind of is what it is. And it's honestly getting a little harder to grow on YouTube if you're not doing stuff that's either hyper topical or kind of getting in like a snit fit with somebody, it feels like. Those seem to be the quick and fast ways to make quick gains here, although I don't think that they're not personally for me. Let me just phrase it that way. I don't want to slander anybody that does their channel the way they want to do their channel. I just don't think those avenues are for me. So I don't want to do it that way. I'd like to continue doing the content the way I like doing my content, because that's what I want to do. And I think there's value in that content. So that's the way I'm going to continue to drive the channel. And people can come, people can go. It's kind of up to them. I'm not really looking to make money off of any one of these. One of my goals when I started YouTube was like, if I got enough money from like ad revenue to put money back into the channel, I would do that. But I didn't really have any aspirations of setting up like a Patreon or any delusions that it was going to become my primary job at any given point, just because I already make a good sum of money at my job. So to have YouTube hit that level, it would become literally almost an overwhelming beast to feed, to be able to have that reliable revenue. And even then, you wouldn't necessarily be able to rely on it, because YouTube, like most of these platforms, like Twitch and a lot of these platforms, changes things based on their business needs, not the clientele that are on there using their platform. They're generally not considered when these business practices and changes take place. And people move from place to place. There's been a big stink now between Twitch and a new up and comer called Kick, and there's been a bunch of people moving here and there. And that's not really the topic we're here to cover tonight. This is just kind of a side thing what we're doing this weekend. What I did this weekend was I spent a lot of time on my wife's computer. I didn't realize that her computer was running as badly as it was until about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And then she came up to me like, I want to say it was like Saturday, and just said, it just crashed. And I'm like, oh, crap. So it came back up, but it's just crashing, trying to run anything she wants to run now. So we went over to Micro Center and spec'd out a new computer, and that took a couple of hours to do everything there. Got both of us some new speakers because mine were starting to cut out and hers died. Brought those back, and then we had to go back there on Sunday. So I was actually kind of ahead video wise, which was good. And all that time went away because like hours and hours, probably about 6 or 7 hours out of my weekend got sucked into just getting her computer back together, and getting all that taken care of. So, it kind of is what it is, but at least I managed to get videos out. And what I mean by scope is the scope of a project or the scope of a video game, like the size, the breadth of it, or how much time it's going to take to do something. That's what I mean by scope in this context.
If you had a bad time at your little computer place, I can make you feel a little bit better. I have to shave my head again because I forgot to do one shot the last time I shaved my head about a month or two ago. So I now have to shave it again for a 3-second shot. That is a miserable life. Yours was a mild inconvenience.
Yeah. Well, this needed to be done. I didn't realize she was still using like a GeForce 970 in her computer. That thing was current when I bought it, so it tells you how old her computer is.
Mm-hmm.
So her computer was very old, and I'm like, look, I can put some Band-Aids on this and probably get it up and running again. But you've had this machine so long, we just need to spec you out a new machine. It's that old. It will just be better if we just get you a more current machine, because no matter what we do, this is still going to run fairly slow. And we have enough money that there's no reason that we shouldn't just get you a nicer machine. Except the 970 was a good card. We're now on the 4000 series. So anything less than a 1080 is just kind of feels archaic at this point. Honestly, I would say the 2000 series is probably where you probably should be card-wise at this point minimum. Most people that are trying to run anything current are using like the 3000 or 4000 series. So, Mo! Good to see you, man. It's good to see that Mo Moon has risen from the dead, because he was only mostly dead, and has come here on the stream. So that was my weekend, such as it was. I mean, I still got a little bit of editing here and there done, but I didn't get any writing. I didn't get any tweaking. I was going to start working on the project that me and Rab have going on together. I was going to do some paring down of that script to see if it looks like it's clean. Start kind of working on that. I have 2 videos mostly written up. I have one game mechanics episode I want to do, and then I have another console episode that I have written up that I got written up a while back. So I wanted to start getting ahead on that. Your hair was growing so well.
Look, Mike, see? Locals, what did I tell you? Is a good place to stream content and make money. Boom. Told you. Anyway.
You did tell me.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I haven't heard of Locals. So you guys have heard of it. I haven't heard of Locals.
Oh, Locals
I just now heard of Kick. And that's because they just now started making a big push. Like, they're dumping tons of money to try to pull people away from Twitch.
Yeah. You know who else did that? Microsoft with Mixer. So
Yep.
Just saying.
Yep. I know. But these people are getting their contract deals and they're getting their money. So they don't care. They're getting their money. What's up, Intellivision Gamer? And I'll be honest, if somebody wanted to offer me $100 million to go stream on Kick, I'd go stream on Kick.
And I would, yeah.
If I could,
the establishment.
if I could, I can do that after I have my $100 million.
I don't know.
It's much easier to do that when I've got the 100 mil.
I'm sure it's fine as a kind of Twitch competitor, but I spent 5 minutes on there, and the content, I was like, no, I'm good.
Which one was it, Kick or
Kick.
Locals?
Yeah, Kick.
I haven't gone over there yet. I know Amaranth moved over there, and her content's always questionable. And a couple other people moved over there, and they got some pretty swanky deals.
There's a lot of questionable content over there.
There's a lot of gambling content over there. There's rumors that they get a lot of their money is funded by gambling. A lot of that side is funded by gambling anyway. So they're big into that kind of community, and the bigger people that have been there are big into that. So. But the topic we have for you guys tonight, now it seems like everybody's kind of filtering in and we've kind of done our thing, is mostly talking about the size of games today and the breadth of the mechanics that you're asked to do in a given game. All these things add into like the scope and the difficulty curve of a video game, and how much of that is kind of detracting away from like the core video game experience, and how much of it is kind of causing the games to more and more come out unfinished, right? Because as the games, the context is as the games kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger, it takes longer and longer for them to be developed. And as you're developing something this sizable, and you're adding this many mechanics in, it's very hard to balance them. It's very hard to make sure that the game's solid and doesn't have any bugs in it. It's very hard to get something out to where it's not in just a shambles. Because as these things come in and as your scope kind of creeps along and you want to add in just this one more thing, or you want to add in just that, or this takes a weird turn, you can fix one thing and break like it does in other things. So a lot of these things start to cause struggles with development. So we thought we would take a crack at kind of talking about this a little bit, about examples, and I know one of which that if it doesn't come up, I'm going to bring it up because it's probably the most public one in the last couple of years that it had a problem, a very public problem. And then there's been a couple that came out this year that had they had better focus or had just sort of streamlined the experience, even in the smaller experiences they probably would have been better experiences. So who kind of wants to start this one out so we can kind of...
I just want to say one quick thing up front. Is as far as like concerning that these games are getting so big that they're hard to manage and they, most likely going to come out broken. What I would say is the great thing to me is that the biggest prover of how much poppycock that is you look at Nintendo's Tears of the Kingdom, which is massive and allows the player to build their own inventions. I mean, like, you're talking about a lot of things here that could fall apart quickly, and that is something that has not had 10,000 patches. It's not, there's not a million bugs in it. It's not broken. Nintendo takes their time to craft a game just right and then release it. And guess what? Hey, what do you call it? Let
me suppose this onto that. Let me put this one supposition. isn't a lot of that based on Breath of the Wild, which already had a pretty significant development time, but
Sure,
had a
but
more
Breath of the Wild
narrow
also
scope?
didn't have
But then
that.
you added like this new architecture onto the same framework, right?
Sure, but Breath of the Wild came without bugs.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. That was a very bug-free game, but I also
It's
felt that
Saints
world was
Row,
far more empty as compared to, say, something like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto,
sure,
right?
but
Where
on
there's a
hardware
million and
that's
one side things for you to do and a million pieces of dialogue that could break at any given moment. Plus all the
I don't
physics.
think it because well, I'm not a programmer, but I don't put these two completely in different places like that. That they're in totally different scopes of programming. I would say I bet you if Nintendo released Grand Theft Auto, it would come out not broken. I just guarantee it.
Well,
They
Grand Theft
always,
Auto wasn't very broken. It's just an example of
you
like
know
a
what I mean. I'm
disparity,
just
right?
saying
Like I don't
anything.
think I don't remember Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5 being super broken when they released.
Let's say
I think they were
Cyberpunk.
actually pretty solid. But Cyberpunk, yeah, that's another beast
Well,
entirely.
there was all kinds of other issues with Cyberpunk. I mean,
Agreed.
the
We're missing the point. I'm merely saying that we have all grown accustomed to games being broken. I would say there's proof that with a company like Nintendo, that it doesn't have to be that way. It's just that
no,
they've learned that they
you're
can make
right.
money. They've learned that they can make money releasing things in a broken state, and we'll just buy it and continue. Like Nintendo doesn't do that. So that's all.
No, they don't, and because they don't do a lot of patching. They don't do a lot of. Now I would also argue that Breath of the Wild probably isn't as or wasn't as complex as some other games that have come out that are broken. There are
I will
other
say
things.
one thing about Breath of the Wild. One of the things that's very complex in a game is the physics. Because some of the weird stuff you can do in that game, because that's kind of my next game mechanics is kind of talking about physics. And that's one of the things I didn't really think of until you start kind of looking back at the game that makes it more impressive. Is this the sheer amount of physics and things that you can move in
On
that
old hardware.
on hardware that's not even up to spec for like the PS4 or the Xbox One. You got to remember that hardware when it released in that generation was underpowered.
Yep.
And it's still holding up and competing against newer hardware that's vastly over what it was already competing against. So it makes what it can do quite impressive, particularly given the fact that it also doubles as a handheld since it's such a hybrid device, right? So being able to pull off some of the magnesis stuff and the telekinesis stuff and all that, then now you have the new Ascend and the construction and all that other stuff that's in there. There's a lot of really goofy stuff that a lot of development teams would struggle to make work. And while I don't think it's as populated as a lot of worlds, because it's really not, when you start looking at Breath of the Wild and the number of people you run into on average versus like a standard day in GTA or Cyberpunk, there's no question. There's just more stuff in the environment in the other games, right? But what they've managed to do is manage their expectations in a smart way. And this plays into what we're talking about because they've managed the expectations of what they expected to be in that world and built and tailored that world to feel natural with just what they put in it and still build a very large interactive world. Whereas Cyberpunk wanted a super populated urban city environment and then tried to do all the side quests and stuff. And so the scope of what they wanted to do is really adventurous. And while I've got nothing but accolades for what they're trying to do with that game, maybe they should have considered starting with it a little less populated or finding better ways to scale it from platform to platform.
Well, they just released it unfinished.
Try to make it run.
Or take take longer to
yes, it needed another year.
Yeah. They needed at least another year, but they weren't going to get another year because they've been saying one more year for like 7 years. Right? Yeah. And so Skyrim is another perfect example of a game that comes out that's just buggy as hell, but that has more it has more to do with that emotion engine that Bethesda's been rocking like forever that they need to redo because their base engine has problems and has had problems forever.
The PS3 version was buggy. The Xbox 360 version was.
I think they put in a lot of patches and stuff to finally stabilize that stupid thing because
PlayStation 3 was impossible to code for.
That was part of that problem because I didn't have.
Anytime you say PlayStation, it's automatically hard to code for. The PS2
No, not always. That's the one big thing. Yeah, the one big thing they fixed in the PlayStation 4 and carried on to the PlayStation 5 was they made that thing developer friendly as all.
Cerny made sure to do that.
Yeah. The thing too that you have to remember, and I think this plays a lot into what causes games to be unfinished. CD Projekt Red is not a giant studio. Nintendo is, and you have to. Nintendo could throw resources that CD Projekt Red couldn't.
Then don't make big games that you can't.
No, totally agree with you.
You have to work within what you're capable of pulling out. And Fastback said he played through Cyberpunk day one. He completed it with some bugs, but nothing that was like really broken. And I know a couple people that had that experience, but I also know a bunch of people that didn't have that experience. So I can't ignore that the game had radical problems when it came out because a handful of people that I know didn't have that problem. But you see all this stuff where everybody else seemed to have this problem.
Played it on PlayStation.
With tons of people saying, no, I had this happen too. Oh, no, I had this other crazy thing happen. And half of it wasn't even documented to happen.
Dude, it just wasn't playable.
Sony pulled it from their store for a year?
Yeah. Sony pulled it off of their store and offered refunds. That's how bad it got.
Yeah. So
and Scepter makes a good point. Nintendo develops for one console.
That's another good point.
And that's a fair point. They know their hardware and they build for their hardware. Yeah, Witcher, and I was talking to my wife about this the other day, that like Witcher 3 didn't even launch as the Witcher 3 that everybody fell in love with CD Projekt Red for. And you got to remember, that was the third in the series. They had two others that hardly anybody ever talks about. The third one is the one that everybody freaking adores, and that game wasn't super solid when it launched. Everybody started finding it way later. That's when it got super popular, after they'd had time to really kind of build onto it, fix it, streamline it, and make it basically what it is today. And I imagine they're going to do the same thing with Cyberpunk. It sounds like the next patch, they've already got like a ton of really cool stuff and nice fixes coming for Cyberpunk itself.
Oh, so Cyberpunk has been great for a very long time.
Yeah, I've got it. I haven't installed it. Like, I waited about a year or so before I got it because I figured that would give them enough time to kind of stabilize everything, right? And make it the game that it was really meant to be in the first place.
Right.
And so one of my first impression of it, I didn't want to pay $60 like 6 months after launch for a game that was already broken and running at 60. So you're not going to catch me at 60 6 to 9 months down the road. I'm just not paying you that for that game anymore. It shouldn't be valued at that with the problems that you had anymore. Period. I don't care if you lost money on it or not. That's on you, not me. I didn't build it. I just want to play it. So I found it on sale for like 30, and I'm like, perfect. I'll pick it up.
With these games, I wish what do you call it? Everything was reversed in that you paid less up front. It's $20 up front because you're basically beta testing the damn thing.
Well,
and then
early access.
I'm sorry, mate?
Early access.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've seen early access on Steam cost like $100 though. So there's really no hard and fast rule for what early access and stuff like that should be. I've seen some stupidly high prices on games that were in alpha states and for early access and stuff like that. And those were basically an alpha build. They weren't even beta. So it kind of depends on what people are starting to do. Now, if you could get people to lower the price on it to get people in while they stabilize the game, I think that would be more. I think for a lot of us that are more reasonable, it would be palpable. I think you'd still have people losing their mind over it because you're just never going to get anybody. Like, it happens every time you get somebody into a beta test on anything. Mm-hmm. People will immediately just start ripping it to shreds. Like, oh, this is trash. This is trash. And I'm like, you are in a beta test. You're literally in a beta test. You are here to help iron out the bugs. And that's what this is for. This is so when it finally finishes its launch, hopefully everything is much cleaner. Diablo 4 is a good example of a modern example of that. The game was solid, even in the early access, but they were doing a lot of work to stress test the servers. And a lot of people were having trouble getting in on those early days, and they were pissed. And I'm like, this is them making sure that like the couple of days early that you get it before it's on the main sale, it's stable. It's so that when they launch it on day one, hopefully you don't have more than a couple hours of hiccup, and then you can just log in. You're not waiting 3, 4, 5 hours like you were on Diablo 2 or Diablo 3. There was a whole 2-week period on Diablo 2 and Diablo 3's launch, from launch to about 2 or 3 weeks later, that you just couldn't get in the game. Like, it was so busy. And it wasn't that anything was broken with the game. The server load was so high that they couldn't keep up with it. And they did a way better job this time. They were much more prepared for it this time. So I've got nothing but good things to say about that launch. It's probably the best Diablo launch they've ever had.
Yeah, because 3 was a poop fire, wasn't it?
Oh, 3 was a mess for about 2 years after launch, but that wasn't because of server issues. They added in a real money auction house into that one. You didn't have sets. The gear wasn't tailored for the class you were playing. You would just get random gear. Half the gear that dropped that were legendaries weren't worth picking up, and the ones that were on the auction house being sold by bots for like 10 million gold, and then they would sell you the gold in real and on down low for cheaper than what Blizzard would sell it to you for, so that you could buy the item that they had posted. So it became this terrible cyclical thing. So once they did what they called, like, I want to say it was called Loot 2.0 when it launched on console, and rebalanced the whole game to tailor it more towards getting drops for your class, that game became just amazing. It should have been that way earlier. So a lot of people like me that stuck with it for 2.5 years on PC were kind of pissed for a while that it took a console launch to fix a game that should have been fixed like a long time ago. So yeah, it had other issues.
I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt, but we caught Mike in another one of his lies without him even saying anything. You'll notice that Retro Advisory Board makes a pretty funny little statement here. And right underneath it, we see LOL Rab with the most straight face on camera. Not a single peep of laughter from Mike. Just LOL.
Hey, Zombie, good to see you, man.
RFL. I was laughing on the inside.
That's right.
Yeah, Sir X-Man's still trying to find time to play Kingdom of Amalur Reckoning. I think I bought that one. I bought so many games when they went on sale on Steam and other places that I just have not had time to get to. And something else pops up, and I end up just gravitating to that instead. It's a nasty circle I'm in of backlog.
Nick, so aside from what I just talked about, as far as like, Nintendo being able to get these things out without bugs, what are some other aspects you wanted to talk about with this topic?
Well, part of it is just mechanics, right? Like, we've added in so many buttons onto the controller and so many new mechanics and so many ways, so many things you have to do when you play. Like, one of the examples that always comes to mind of adding complexity for the sake of complexity to the point where it almost makes the game frustrating to play is like Doom 2016 to Doom Eternal. Doom 2016 was a beautiful exercise in complete simplicity.
Yep.
It had just enough complexity that you had to think when you were fighting, but you weren't always struggling to flip through weapons. You weren't having to hit specific target areas. You didn't have to like use a flamethrower for one thing and then a gory kill for another, and then like something and then like a something else for another resource. You didn't have 3 resources to manage along with like multi-platform jumps and flips and grappling and all this other stuff that they added into Eternal. It became such a mechanic overload that I know a lot of people that played and beat 2016 played Eternal for a couple hours and just said, I'm done. Even putting it on easy, they were just like, I'm done. This is too complicated. It's just not fun, right? And so a lot of games have started to do this. You see more and more of these mechanics coming out. And it starts to make playing the game so complicated, right? that a lot of people just start to tap out on it as you include more and more of these mechanics.
I think Fastback had asked, does Tears has no bugs? No, of course it has bugs, but it's like the equivalent of that no one is speaking about. Like, it's so little, it's not become a thing. Where you take Cyberpunk, for instance, and it's a thing. Now, as far as Doom, Nick, couldn't you just say with Doom Eternal that they just wanted to try to, take the game to another place? They wanted to do something a little bit new with it. Still kind of the same idea, but give it kind of, I don't know what you'd call, almost like it was more of a strategy.
No, and that's exactly kind of what they were going for, because ammunition was more limited per weapon as far as the capacity goes. Certain weapons just effectively didn't work against certain enemies, so you had to switch weapons. And that was one of the things that they wanted people to do more of. But there's such a thing as, I feel like, taking things from, like, well, players aren't using enough of this, so let's tweak it, and then tweaking it too far, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of find that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was able to play and complete Eternal, and I know other people that were just as well, it was a more frustrating experience for how far they tweaked it the other way. You know what I mean? It wasn't that it wasn't fun. I still had a lot of fun with the game. Don't get me wrong. I still love that game. I just don't put it as high on my list as I do the 2016 reboot, because they added almost too much stuff in there that I'm spending more time worried about resources and not enough having fun shooting demons.
Right. You're doing things that Doom was never meant for.
Yeah.
And Seth plays the heck out of Eternal. And I remember he came to me, he's like, "So Dad, what's your favorite level in Doom Eternal?" I'm like, I don't know. Because it became just another shooter for me. Whereas I'm like, I could remember a good bit. Like I'm like, but if you ask me about the 1993 Doom, I say the Citadel. And I made him go start playing that so he could see what Doom was supposed to be back in the day.
Yeah.
It's like
and basically it was whatever you had ammo for at the time, that's what you made.
Right.
Right.
It's what happened. It's what happened too when they destroyed Duke Nukem.
Yeah, Paradox mentioned Duke Nukem Forever was just scope creep and delays. Like, they couldn't find the right studio to deal with it. They kept changing engines all the time because a new engine would come out and they'd have this new idea, so they keep changing engines. And that's what I mean by that. That goes more into scope creep rather than advanced mechanics starting to detract from the game because there's so much going on, right? So there's a couple of ways that game development can have problems that can detract from the end game experience. One is you built something that was too big for the team that you had, right? You needed to manage your expectations, and if you wanted to get the game there, you could do that with like DLC, right? Well, we're going to add this part will come in this part will come in this, and you put it in as part of your roadmap. So you come out with like your solid experience, and then as you build onto it, you can add things that people can go back to in the original world and side quests they can do and this, that, and the other. That way you kind of build onto the game and you can still handle it with your team and kind of keep it stable, right?
Right.
But most people don't want to see that kind of incremental design when they buy the game. When you see something like Cyberpunk, they want this massive world. That's what they're looking for, right? So that takes either a ton of initial time up front with people that are willing to both work crunch hours and be able to stay on the project, and honestly, board members that are okay with this project taking a very long time. Maybe you have to splinter off some other people onto a different project in order to develop something smaller so that you continue to have revenue while you work on this large project, right? That way you have more releases, maybe AA quality games or stuff like that, just to kind of build goodwill and things like that. You do small little, like a cell shaded beat 'em up or something with Cyberpunk, or a racing game or something that ties into Cyberpunk. That's a smaller title. It's a smaller, tighter title that you could have. 4 or 5 people work on, and they could debug it and get it out, right? So that keeps people excited for the main game because of something else to play in the interim. And then maybe you make that like a sub game into the main game or something where you go into an arcade and you can play those later or something, right? You know, something neat like that that you can add in or tweak or add more levels to, you know, stuff like that. The other one is like the mechanics creep itself, whereas, well, I want to add like, I want to have a parry work this way for this, or I want it to work this way for this thing, and then I want it to work this other way for this other thing. And then before you know it, you have like this simple, what should be a simple mechanic that has like 4 or 5, 6 different implementations. We've all run into like games that have had what looked to be a simple thing to start out with, and then by the time you get to the end of the game, you're like, why does this work this way? Right? Like it doesn't work anymore. Because I've got everybody coming in at a different angle with a different weapon, but I have to handle it a slightly different way. But there's too much going on at the same time. Whereas if you'd done it with the same mechanic, I could just work with it, and it wouldn't be as big of a distraction. So now you're taken out of the game because you're having to worry about how to play it mechanically rather than experiencing what they're trying to get you to experience in the game. Right? Because we've all seen games like that, you know. And then you've got this other one where you got just like they want to change the engine every 5 seconds, or you know like it was Anthem, like they saw the game at E3 and they're like, oh, that's what we're building. I guess we should start building that now. You know, examples like that where nobody had any idea what was going on. Nobody had any idea what they were really building. And then they see this really beautiful trailer and they're like, well, I guess we need to build that. You know, so there's a couple of ways this can happen. And it's a big problem in modern game development, right? When you have either unfocused teams or projects just go too long or they get too big for the team, right? So it's managing to, one, as gamers, manage our expectations from developers. And 2, from developers being able to manage expectations of what they can do with the staff they have, or justifying adding the more staff that they need that they can get up to speed early enough that they can do this efficiently, right? Gamers and media are more demanding today, right? Rare launched Sea of Thieves, but was criticized for lack of content. Yeah. And Cyberpunk should have started with one big city and expanded. And honestly, I would like to see Rare finally move away from Sea of Thieves. I feel like they have given that game more than enough content. And this latest expansion, the thing I heard the most on Twitter is, what the fuck is Secret of Monkey Island? And that hurt me on multiple levels.
That's just people. That's just, you know what that is? That's children. That's
who's playing the game.
No.
That's who's playing the game, man. So people Seth's age are the primary players of the game. They don't know what Monkey Island is. Well, Seth might.
No, he doesn't. But as long as almost 20 million people are playing Sea of Thieves, Rare's not coming off of it because that is a huge hit. But gamers are more demanding because gamers are being charged more. When you're being asked to start paying $70 a game over,
dude, that's the first increase since like 1995.
Doesn't matter when it was.
It's the first increase since 1995, dude. It's $10. And now I'm more worried about the microtransactions and stuff that they're trying to get you to buy into that. Then, you know what I mean? That's more worrisome to me than an extra $10 per title.
Well, there's that, but if you are, I don't care when movies were $5 a movie and now they're $25 a movie. The reason I don't go is because I don't get $20 more experience out of it, especially when I can watch it at home on a
Oh, you should see what they're trying to sell now. I went to go see Rise of the Beast and I was really excited to potentially buy the Optimus Prime collector thing that they had going with it. It was the popcorn holder and drink holder. And then I looked at the price. They wanted $50 for that. Yeah. And I'm like, nope. I'm like, I can't do it, man.
You know, if you're telling me you have to charge me $10 more for the game because your production costs have gone up, then your production should be better.
I agree that the production should be better, and you could argue that the fidelity and the scope of what they're trying to do is greater. It's just not stable.
Zelda was.
Again,
That
but,
went to 70.
but again, to everybody in the chat's argument, they were building it for a single console that they knew in the first party title.
And I've always denied, I've always fought this, but all I ever hear from people over and over again, dude, they're all just PCs. This is all nonsense, but they're all PCs. Well, if they're all PCs, why are they always constantly not working on one versus the other? It's because they're not. They're based on a tiny framework of that, but these are all very individual different things. So
yeah, the major difficulty is, honestly, I think it's almost more difficult. I think it's almost more difficult for PlayStation this in all the generations than it is for Xbox. Like Nintendo, and everything's had to be tweaked specifically for Nintendo because Nintendo's constraints to the hybrid architecture, so they have their own way of building things. PlayStation's the same way; they have their own specific architecture that has to be handled for. The Xbox is closer to PC hardware. It's not quite PC
still
hardware.
Not 1-to-1,
but it's much closer to translate to PC from Xbox, which is why you're seeing most of their stuff launch on Game Pass on PC and Xbox on the same day, because it's not as big of a stretch to get it from one platform to the other.
But also, let's also say this too: like, when has Nintendo has rarely done microtransactions, DLC, things like that. I would just say that company has a far greater respect for their product and how it is displayed to the public than a lot of these other companies who I think are just in it for the money and really don't really care, because they just go, all right, well, we're going to get X amount of complaints, but we can release it this way and we'll still make money and we'll fix it eventually.
I think when you're talking Activision and EA, that's totally a legitimate argument. I think CD Projekt didn't really intend that. I think they felt a lot of pressure. Hi, Electron Junkie. How are you, by the way? And I agree, physical media costs so much less today with optical media and almost nothing with digital. And that's part of my. And this is one of the things that we kind of like to see change, because one of the initial arguments for digital media costing the same amount as physical media is because they didn't want to detract sales from the stores. They still needed the brick-and-mortar stores.
Well, they're going to keep the price identical.
Now that everybody's established that it's okay to pay that price digitally, the same as physical, which requires printing, it requires shipping and printing and packaging and all the manufacturing work and all that stuff. Now that people are used to that, they're never going to lower that price. It should have been lower, but
when was it lower?
It never was.
Right.
It should have been. Is my point. When you started releasing it digitally,
they never knew what a corporation was.
Yeah, it should have been lower. One of the main arguments for people when they complained about it as well, we're trying to keep prices competitive between the physical store and the online store, so the brick and mortar stores don't go under. So we're charging more for the digital copy than we really need to keep prices competitive, so we're not running people away from brick and mortar stores and closing down jobs. That was the original argument.
Ethics of a corporation, right? When that ever happened.
Now they're really just saying, well, we just want to release digital consoles. We don't actually want to have the disk drive in there. But they're going to charge you the same price for it regardless.
Now they're also going to fight to make sure you don't own it.
Well, you still don't own it even with a physical disc anymore. But that's a topic we've covered, but I'd happily cover again. But that's sort of outside the scope of what we're discussing tonight, right? But yeah, that's a whole other thing. Nintendo is top tier, no doubt about it. Well, last couple of generations, when you're talking like PS4 and you're talking like this generation, I'd say they're still ahead in this generation because they have the more stable platform and the more stable game releases that have come out. Like, even when you're looking at new IPs, like let's take another example kind of off the wall. Redfall should have been a much different game than it was. Like, I played it, it wasn't broken, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be from the way they were trying to sell it to me. It felt like they were struggling to find they were struggling to build a game type that they weren't really familiar with. So the gunplay wasn't all that great. A lot of the encounters, like the sub bosses, weren't. Sometimes I would kill them and not even know I killed them, and then I'd have to go find out where the skull thing dropped so I could go fight the main boss. And the main boss encounters were actually the most creative things there that they had going on. Those were actually beautiful set pieces with cool bosses. Sometimes I had the right gun, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes it was frustrating to figure out what they wanted me to do because it might be very alien from like one setup to the next with what they wanted you to do. Most of them would be one way, and then one of them was a completely different way, for example. So, but it kept things interesting and changed the pace. I thought the way they told the story wasn't too bad, but they could have done more actual animation on it. Instead, they basically did almost like comic book slides without making it look like an actual comic book. You know?
Redfall from afar looked like it's. I haven't played it. It's just from afar. It looked like they gave up three-quarters of the way through, and just went like, like, whoa, we're gonna do that. And that's what they released. Was just them just going.
But it had potential to be a much more than it is, and it could be revamped to be that game still. It just depends if they want to put the time into it.
I think they're like abandoning it, right? Like they're not even like communicating.
I don't know if they are or not. I know Hello Games spent a ton of time on No Man's Sky. That was another bad launch.
Oh well, they did great.
Right?
Yeah. Everybody thought, and everybody thought that Hello Games was going to close shop. Like,
you know what? I got nothing. That is still not a super fun game for me, but I got nothing but respect for them and the work they put into that game over time. Like I can't talk bad about them. They put a truckload of time making that game what they wanted it to be.
Which is what Rare did with Sea of Thieves.
Yeah. And I got nothing but respect for them on that. My frustration is I want to see Rare I want to see stuff like Killer Instinct come back, right? I want to see them come up with other new IPs. I'm frustrated with just seeing a Sea of Thieves update from them and not seeing more IPs from them because they're too good of a studio.
Here's the problem. The problem is that it's not the same studio we remember. And I get the need because I have said for
is Mike sleeping outside because of Watch a Girl?
I've said for a while now.
Place outside with the word with.
Did Fastback hit bed? Did we miss him? I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, Fastback. If you catch us on the replay, man, I'm sorry.
The thing is that Rare can't make those games anymore. They're not that studio anymore. When they were bought by Microsoft, the two head guys left. It basically became a studio that was headed by a guy who was tasked with making the Xbox Live avatars, and then went on to create all the Kinect stuff, Kinect Sports, which was a highly popular game.
I honestly,
it's not. I
thought it was kind of a waste of Rare to put them on Kinect Sports, but I think that was sort of a pet project for them.
It was one of the best-selling accessories ever, and was in the Guinness Book of World Records. I can't agree with that.
I would put Gunstringer way above Kinect Sports any day.
I'm just telling you what the numbers are. But here's the thing. I wanted to the point. I wanted Rare to make another Conquer game, right? The problem is that what Rare became was Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which was a great game. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which was mid-level at best, and Kinect Sports, which was great, and trying to compete with the Wii, and then Sea of Thieves, which started very slow and then just kept building and building and building, and is now played by 20 million people. It's hard to
see. I don't want to get into Sea of Thieves because I hear nothing but people going in and just like ganking people constantly in that game, and I don't want anything to do with that. Like, that's a hard no for me. I don't want to go into a PvP environment.
Yeah,
I have no interest.
It's become, unfortunately, while it is highly played, it has also become a YouTube influencer game, and because it's games as a service, which as you guys all know, is what I think is the bane of existence. But again, I can't argue.
That's another that's another topic that we were going to talk about, is like games as a service. That was another one of those that we were going to talk about. Probably not tonight, because we're 55 minutes in on this one, so we're actually clipping along pretty well.
Yeah, I'm fine keeping that as a separate topic for the next RetroRoots.
And Sir X-Man brings another good point up. Explain, please, if they make the games and develop them on PC.
Not. I don't know why
they have a problem when they bring them to PC. But you'll see. But well, he's not.
I've coded games, and even in my limited experience, I can tell you they are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. It's the same base level, but then you're starting to get into each system has its own thing, and those things are dramatically different than the others. So what will work on one will not translate perfectly to the other. That's why they're not PCs; they are consoles. That's why.
Well, some of the games, they do develop them on PC, and then they do all the final tweaks and ports and move them onto the console. So they do a lot of development on PC in a lot of cases. Because you'll see on a lot of these shows that they'll show content, but it'll be on the PC. It won't be on console. It won't be rendered or running on console yet. They haven't gotten it that far. Right, they're running on whatever they're coding on, and they're not coding on the console; they're coding on their PC. So they're rough testing the stuff where it's convenient, which is their PC.
100%. I'm just saying it's not a one-for-one port. It's not like, okay, I programmed this and now it just works on every system.
Oh no! I don't think that's what he's saying, and that's certainly not what I'm saying.
Well, I'm saying if it's done on a PC, you make it on a PC. Their first priority, most of these things are going to be that they want to get them on console. The great thing about a console is that you have set limits. The problem with a PC, which has always been my problem with PC, is that there isn't a set thing. You're trying to make something for every option and compatible.
You have such a wide criteria that you run into weird exceptions. Like I think Redfall had this, where they had a weird disparity where if your GPU was too much faster than your CPU, it would cause like massive issues with something in the game, and you'd have major problems. And they didn't expect that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, most people will upgrade their GPU. Like, a lot of people will upgrade their GPU like 4 times before they ever upgrade their CPU, because the CPU means I have to go buy a new motherboard.
Yeah.
Right. I can't. Most of the time, I can't just change processor, because by the time I go to change my CPU again, it's on a different socket type. Right. So that means I'm basically looking at a full rebuild. I'd rather just change out the card.
Yeah.
But I think their bigger problem is, like, you've got people that will invest in, like, say, an i5 and then buy a 4090 and wonder what's going on. Like, well, yeah, you bought the cheapest CPU you could buy that would get you up and running, and then you dropped your money in your GPU. I get your thought process. You could make a cheaper build that way, but I also get why it would be a developer's nightmare, right? Because that CPU is not going to clock anywhere near what your graphics card's capable of. So you still have a massive problem and a bottleneck, right, between the two. Because the CPU still has to send the data to the graphics card. And the graphics card's sitting there all day going, dude, where's my data? Consoles aren't as different today as 25 years ago. And that's correct. But they still have different architecture, is our point. If you really look at the architecture of what's under the hood of, like, say, a PS5 and like what's under a normal console, like, even the cooling is different. Like, there's a reason most people have told you they want you to lay that thing on its side, because it's using like a liquid metal that's sitting on top of it instead of like a normal thermal paste and heat sink, so they could save space. Right? The way the fans and the architecture is designed to basically funnel things up and out and make that kind of vortex. Even the way the Xbox Series X is designed with that big brick in the center console thing is meant to, like, cyclone the air out of it, right? There's a lot of things, even in just the cooling, that are vastly different than the way you would approach a CPU build. And not only that, you're looking at memory constraints too, right? You have a shared memory space, and most times that's shared between the operating system and a lot of the onboard graphics, because the graphics doesn't necessarily have its own memory. So you have to segment that stuff. So you either prioritize it when you're in a game that it only runs this, or you only have like half as much as what you would have, or maybe 2/3 of that, to be able to allocate it to the GPU. So you can't get the same performance that you would think you would get out of a PC because of the way the architecture has to work, right? There's a lot of gotchas in that architecture still. And I'm pretty sure that's what Panda's driving at. I feel like Mike's just gone quiet on us.
Well, the tough thing about how Microsoft approaches the Xbox is a little
Nice.
different.
Nick's saying really big words.
Rab's on fire tonight.
I do feel like we did lose a lot of audience, so maybe I did like get everybody go, "Ow, no!"
I mean, you are correct about the shared memory. I don't know I don't believe that any of them have specific. It's not like they have video. They're all socks. They're all, on chip. So that part I get. When they went to create these new sets of consoles, AMD's putting the same base CPUs and GPUs that they're putting in cards for PC. And then, where PS5 has this big issue with the games that they've pushed over to PC, like The Last of Us, which had all kinds of crazy issues, is they're not using the APIs that Microsoft is using, which is basically the Xbox One, One X, Series X, and all that stuff is all Windows 10 core at its base, which is why you see day and date PC releases now with Xbox. Starfield it used to be, right, that even on Xbox version of a game would come out and then 8 months later it would come out on PC, even within Microsoft. And now they're coming out at the same time, and they're using.
I'm kind of glad they're doing that, because there's a lot less problems on PC lately.
Yeah.
Than there was in the past. Like last generation, PC gamers were like, everybody's like, "Oh, well, you have a PC Master Race." I'm like, PC was like the redheaded stepchild last generation. What are you talking about?
Yep.
Every release that came out was like unbelievably broken in crazy ways. Like, and that's because they would put like their D-list team on that port.
Right.
Like they put their least experienced team that just needed to code. They needed to keep them busy and get them to learn something on that port. They didn't care if it worked or not. The PC market wasn't a priority market. And I understood that, right? You got far more consoles out there, and the consoles are far more affordable than it is to build an up-to-date gaming PC. Like, that's why I was kind of chuckling when people were chuckling about Starfield and the 30 frames a second, and then they're posting something like a 4090. I'm like, so you're going to spend 4 times as much on that graphics card to get this thing to run at 60 than your $500 console? I mean, cool, you got your 60, but I mean, what you're talking about are so
right at
different
what cost?
Price-wise,
right,
that you're not really comparing the same thing here, right?
Right, especially when you're dealing with, as you said earlier, an older engine that isn't designed, to run that game in that spec.
Right. And Dreadpool says the reason Mike is quiet is because he's been thinking of what to cook on the hibachi. And Scepter says if you watch Digital Foundry comparisons, there isn't that much of a difference in the architecture anymore. And I'd say that's correct to a certain amount of extent, but you still have more power throttling on a console than you're going to get on a PC. And the bigger problem with going to PC is you have a wider array of specs.
Exactly. That's
yeah.
And that's the biggest hurdle that you have on PC is you have anybody trying to run this thing on the minimum specs. And honestly, they need to be better about doing this these days. It's been a long time since I've seen recommended specs and minimum specs on a piece of software anymore. It just shows up in the store and you buy it. It may work. It may not, depending how old your computer is. It's kind of up to you to guesstimate whether or not it's going to work on your hardware. But they used to have minimum requirements of like memory and CPU and GPU and all that, and then the recommended requirements for the main experience, right? Like what they think is best to run this on if you want. And then anything above that, you could really crank up all the bells and whistles and do crazy stuff with it and get insane frame rates, right? But they had that range, and I feel like that range is just kind of going out the window as they develop these things. They don't really post that anymore. So part of it, I think, is people buying stuff on underpowered hardware, right? Because you got people on a GeForce 1080 trying to run Cyberpunk at like high settings. That's not going to work. If you hit medium, you're probably pushing that thing too hard, right? Mm-hmm. So and part of it is on the consumer, not understanding what they can really push on there and not understanding how to tailor the experience on PC. And part of it is on the developer for just not making things stable enough when they port it, because they're trying to juggle too many resolutions and too many different hardware specs that it just becomes overload in development and it just breaks the whole thing. Last of Us is a good example of that. That game was broken on all hardware specs. Matter of fact, I think that was the one where the CPU and the GPU difference was the issue. And they're like, well, we didn't account for this. I'm like, have you never developed a game for a PC before? Like, is this your first time? Because that should have been the first thing that entered into your brain, is a underpowered CPU and an overpowered GPU. Because that's where people are going to get the most bang for their buck on their CPU on their computer upgrades, without having to build an entirely new machine.
Right.
And oftentimes, even I would buy a big beastly GPU first, and then later I would get the hardware to build the rest of the machine, because I knew the GPU was going to cost me as much as the rest of the build.
Well, and in a way, and I'm not saying it's wrong, necessarily a wrong way to go, but you're more or less brute forcing your way into that performance. If you're spending that much money on a GPU, you
absolutely are. You're overcoming the limitations of what's there by just fast, and that's how it's always worked.
Right. You throw spec at it.
Yeah, it's always worked that way. I mean, look at the Unreal Engine when they would do Unreal Tournament and stuff like that, right? It was basically, it would crush all the current hardware, and then you would slowly start to hit it and surpass it.
Right.
Or you would do tweaks and get this and then that in, and you'd optimize it or overclock or whatever to try to eke out the performance you could. And that's what sold the new hardware. That was one of its purposes for existing, was to drive that market.
What was our... Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
What's been our big inside joke in gaming for the last, 20 years? It's not a good GPU if you can't run Crysis on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that joke's kind of dead in the water now, because Crysis is so old.
It still makes machines like literally take off and fly through the house.
That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I need to yell back to my wife that I have a new test for her PC to see if it can pick it off the ground and make it fly. If I could control it, I can make it hover around the dog.
There you go. All right, now we're going for Crysis 3 on ultra settings at 1080.
I think the current benchmark for that now is like Cyberpunk with all the ray tracing on, which I haven't even tried on this one.
Very true.
That's apparently been taking machines. But I mean, these are the kind of things that you have to take into, to wrap it back to the topic. These are the kinds of things that you have to take into account when you're developing in a game these days, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't do that if you can't do some of these things outside the gate, then you need to delay that particular release. Like if it's going to take you longer to optimize it for PC, then PC can't come out day and date. It can't. you're just going to get more bad press on it than it's worth doing it. And if it won't run well on the older hardware, then maybe don't release it on the older hardware. That was one of Cyberpunk's biggest problems, is they released it on the previous generation of hardware that was really under-equipped to handle that game. And it probably shouldn't have been on there, quite frankly. It probably should have been where the line in the sand gets drawn
Which game
for the next generation.
Which game?
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk, I played it on the X even back when it first came out, the One X, and it played pretty okay.
Did it? Okay, because I knew tons of people that had
Yeah.
everything breaking. I saw so many videos of
There was
everything
tons of-
glitching and breaking and flying to pieces in that game.
Yeah,
And primarily on older hardware, like the PS4 and Xbox One generation is where they're having the most
PS4 was a
problems.
different beast. The Xbox One X was because I had it on everything. The One X played it the best. There was still glitches and stuff, but great. The PlayStation 4, god awful. Xbox One, god awful. But PlayStation 4, really the winner of terribleness. And then when they started patching things up, it's been totally playable on the One X for a long time now. Like, it works. It's.
Oh no, I knew they would eventually get it to where it would run smoothly. I knew I knew if they let them continue to stay on that game, they would make that game sing at some point.
Mhm.
I knew they would. Now, the big worry is that they were going to have such a low confidence in them that they might break that studio apart or just drop the game entirely, and that would have been the bigger crime, I feel like, rather than continuing to pursue it and come out with a new DLC and stabilize the game and doing what they're doing, right?
Cyberpunk ultimately was a success for them, with a huge success.
Yeah. No, I at some point I'm going to dig into it, because when I first saw it, I was super excited for it. I'm like, dude, this is going to be great. This is like
It's
right
a
up
great
my
game.
alley. You know, it was kind of like when I saw Outer Worlds. When I saw that one, I go, that looks fun,
Mhm.
right? It looks a
Odd
little bit like
comparison, but-
Fallout, but it's built by Obsidian, which is known
Mhm.
to make one of the better Fallout franchise. I'm curious to try this one, and I dug into it, and I'm like, this has a much more fun story than I thought I was going to get. The combat's good. Their version of the VAT system is a lot less intrusive than previous systems I've seen. This is fun, right? I'm having
I
a
love
very
that
good
game.
time with this one. And I'm hoping Starfield does the same thing. I'm always leery around Bethesda because me and them don't have a good track record of syncing up within my enjoyment level. I get that I'm hugely in the minority and everybody loves their stuff. I'm just one of the odd men out usually on their stuff.
You're
So-
out. You're the odd man out on this game in particular. Like, for me, this is an easy system seller.
What, Starfield?
Yeah.
I'll try it. I mean, I have every intention of trying it because it's going to be on Game Pass. There's no reason for me not to try it other than just laziness.
Well,
right?
I'm saying it's so effective. It's taking a guy like me that has no interest in Game Pass that would actually want to get a new Xbox system and buy it. That's how good that game looks to me.
Yeah, I need
So
to
it
watch.
did exactly what it needed to.
I need to watch the 15-minute presentation on it because I've had
15.
other
It's
people do.
200
That
hours
was
long. It was
40.
like-
It was like
Yeah.
45.
It was way too long.
Their funding needs that legacy install number, though. They would have been fine to delay, but ultimately it worked for them. A lot of negative press, but they profited as most everyone has done it. Yeah. They skated by with a pass.
Right.
Game Pass, if you will. That makes no sense.
I mean, Hello Games got a lot of flack, but eventually built that game up, and they had a really low following, and more people have jumped in as that game has expanded. And one of the things that was frustrating to me for that game, because I didn't think that primary gameplay loop that they were showing was going to be all that appealing to me.
I was there from day one. Yeah.
I got it day one, and I've been in and out of that game over years.
Mhm.
Like, they'll put a new patch out, I'll try it. I'm still mostly just mining for carbon, which is boring.
Yeah.
I find it very boring, and I don't really like base building, and that was
Have
the
you
other
played
big
in
feature.
VR?
I have not tried it in VR now.
Pretty
It
cool.
might be more fun in VR.
Yeah, because those little mundane things suddenly are a little bit more interesting.
I could see that. Like, they did a lot of forced exposition. Like, they immediately threw me into some really bad storms and things like that. And then, in the end, I got what they were doing because they were trying to introduce new mechanics that they had put in the tutorial. And I'm like, this is all well and good, but I'm not going to build anything past this shack. Like, it holds no interest to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, building a farm on a planet is not what I wanted, not what I want out of No Man's Sky. I want meaningful exploration, right? One of the things they still hadn't fixed in that game that still drives me crazy to this day, they may have finally fixed it. Learning the language was pointless. Learning any language was pointless. I saw no benefit to staying in the universe and exploring planet after planet. I spent literally hours and hours and hours and hours and hours learning probably like 100 to 1,000 words, hundreds and hundreds of words. And nothing made any sense that anybody was saying still. And what little did make sense when I could communicate with them led nowhere. And I'm like, why can I learn this language if there's nothing more interesting to do with it? Why is it here? Right? Why learn it at all? Why even make it a mechanic? Right? I mean, if you could barter better, or you got side quests that opened up, or cities that you could then go into that you couldn't go into before because you learned some of the mannerisms and the culture and stuff like that. Or you could go out and find artifacts and build your reputation with these people to get you into these areas, or to buy new ships and things like that. That would be something. It didn't seem like they ever put any of that in there. I could be wrong. Maybe I just didn't get deep enough into it. But I didn't see any of that in there.
Right.
And that seemed like a big missed opportunity when you literally build something to better your communication with these alien species. It was very confusing. Now I'm glad they added in like the new vehicles, and I'm glad they added in like the farming and the city building and stuff that you could do, and all the space piracy and stuff that you can do. And I'm glad you can finally play with friends. Those are all great things to add. I just feel
That
like
was awkward in the beginning.
I could totally see that being awkward in the beginning.
Yeah.
But
Remember
that's
when
another one of those weird things.
that two people were, they like, do you remember how that like destroyed the internet that day when two people found each other that they should have been seeing each other in the game, but they never did? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I thought it was that you could, like, somebody could drop something and then you could go over and pick it up.
Well, they said that you could, if I recall right, that you could see each other, and someone proved that they were lying because they were watching a stream and they went, "Oh my God, I'm on the same planet," and they couldn't see each other, and
Maybe you're right.
that crashed the internet that day of drama gossip, and that company paid heavily for that, but they've turned everything around as we talked about.
Yeah, no, like I said, they're kind of one of those things that it kind of brought to mind a series that's going to eat up a lot of time when I try to do it. But the idea was to basically look at games that were almost a complete failure or flop in the beginning and then became big successes, right? Sea of Thieves counts in that. Final Fantasy 14 counts in that.
No Man's
Sky counts in that, right? Yep. Cyberpunk counts in that to an extent.
Oh, yeah.
Because it started as a flop, right?
Yeah.
Witcher 3 to an extent kind of counts as that because that wasn't all that great at its initial launch, and it became a very well. That's why everybody could never see them doing anything wrong, because they patched the crap out of the game and made it freaking amazing, and added tons of extra content to it. So there's a number of games that have come out that have been bad at launch and then really did start to either get restructured and rebuilt and relaunched, like Final Fantasy 14 is called Realm Reborn, specifically because the initial launch was so bad they had to go back to the drawing board, rebuild it, and relaunch it.
Diablo 3, right?
Diablo 3 is another one that basically turned around. It took a couple of years in a console launch to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
But that became probably one of their best titles, particularly in the end game. The end game in that one had so much stuff you could do. I literally spent years playing through end game in that one, seeing how far I could get. There was always something to do in that end game, and it rarely ever felt boring. And then when they added seasons, it got even better, because then you would get new sets, would let you experiment with new classes and things like that. You get new pets and new titles and all this other stuff, and it was just a lot of fun to dig into. But a lot of that didn't come until like years down the road, right? When it initially launched, it was kind of bare bones. It was a little frustrating because The loot optimization wasn't there. A lot of the skills didn't work as well as they were supposed to. Most of them were junk. It took getting sets and things like that in there to really start making certain builds synergize and make things hum the way that game probably should have much earlier on. But people bought into it and stuck with it, and the development team stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine 4 is probably only going to go up because it's already had a very good launch. But I can only imagine that if they stick with it the way they did with 3, we're going to have something that possibly has even longer legs than 3 in the end, which would be great. I'm all for that. I'm all for games that'll suck that much time.
Yeah, I just wish it started at a complete level. And you know, this stuff, we've talked about this ad nauseum. A couple of one of the biggest reasons is because now with things being as digital as they are, there's an air of we need to. I don't buy into laziness, right? I don't think anybody's lazy. What I think is a publisher, for example, needs to get back some return on their investment. So you're with Hello Games, Sony published it. Not didn't publish it, but they marketed it. I mean, they basically
they funded a lot of that.
They did.
And so, Street Fighter V was the same way. I saw a bunch of people complaining about that when it came out, but Sony footed a lot of the bill for that. They even get that one to go out the door.
Yep.
And that's another one that became a much better game as it went along than it launched.
Yep. And I think some of it is we can't wait anymore. We need to get some return on our investment. So,
and Surge makes another point with Battlefield 4.
Battlefield 4.
I don't mess with Battlefield personally, but I do know a lot of people just railed on that game, and then they kept working on it.
Yep. And now they've given that, and that's now in the hands of Respawn. Not Battlefield 4, but the Battlefield franchise.
Right.
But Battlefield 4 is the same way. EA needed that game out, and it wasn't ready, but, well, we'll just throw it out there, and then we'll just continue to make it better and call it, just call it Seasons. And sometimes it works, like Battlefield 4. Sometimes it doesn't work, and unfortunately, I think Redfall is going to be one of those that doesn't work. I think Redfall. I
have a feeling they're just going to drop that one.
I've heard that it was abandoned. Like there's no roadmap. There's no.
There's no roadmap for new content, but they will
fix bugs.
They will put and there's a set of patches already out, and they are committed to putting the performance mode in.
Well, they need to at least add that extra class that they sold everybody with that extra pass. Because there was a $30 DLC that was supposed to give you extra skins and another class. It wasn't supposed to add any more game content, but it was supposed to give you somebody else with a different playstyle you could play. So they need to at least finish that. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people that are very justifiably upset because they didn't get all their content. Right? Like, people were upset with Street Fighter 6 Season Pass that they already sold because none of the new characters are there and a lot of their stuff isn't there yet. Well, it wasn't designed to be there initially. You were buying it so you didn't have to pay for it down the road, right? You just pay for it up front. So you're going to get your 4 new characters down the road, which is the big bulk of your $30 cost on top of the drive tickets and stuff, which is their currency that you can either earn or buy in the game, right? So it was part of that pass. And that happens with every fighting game. Why people are surprised with that now, that's always how those have worked. I knew every time I buy those season passes that I may get a character when I buy it, I may not. And I'll eventually get all the characters that they promise. That's a given. But I'm not going to get them day one. That's not going to happen, right? The only time stuff like that happens is when you pre-order a game and one of the pre-order offers is like, this character's unlocked early, right? or it's not sold to you separately on day one like it is everybody else, right? Like Goro from Mortal Kombat 10 was that way, and I think there was one on 11 too that unlocked immediately as opposed to having to wait. Like everybody else would have to wait if they didn't pre-order the game. And it's smart to do stuff like that because honestly, I want to get physical copies of these things, but it's almost impossible to do that anymore. I went aiming for the Mortal Kombat 1 Collector's Edition because I wanted that statue. I thought that was worth spending the money on. And I still can't find a copy of it. Every time I see a notification that more of them come up, they're gone. And I'm sure they're on eBay for like $1,000. And I'm not paying that. It's just not happening. It can sit in somebody's basement like all those PS5s. I'm not paying that. It is what it is. I think you should take orders for those things and then fulfill those orders if you want people to buy them. You take a number of orders, and then when you're done, you produce that amount. If it takes a little while to be able to get this out to people, then it takes a little while. You let people know up front that we're going to make these to however many people that order these. This may delay your initial order, of the game or something like that. Maybe give a download code for it for the console that you picked it on so that you can at least download and play the game while you wait on your physical edition to arrive. You know what I mean? And do it that way. But that's a whole other conversation. Hey, Gorge, good to see you, man.
Gorge!
Battlefield 2024 is awesome now. Why does it take EA 2 years to get it together? Again, this comes down to EA as a company and their mentality and how they handle their customers. EA's been bad about this for years and years and years. They gained a good bit of goodwill by releasing, Jedi Fallen Order and going back on their step that games as a service is the only thing we want to do. There is no market for single-player games. That got proven wrong with Fallen Order. Yeah. And again with Survivor. Because people love those games. But they still, at their core, want to be a games as a service company, and most people want to be a games as a service company. And that's because you get persistent revenue. You always have revenue coming in. That's why they want Game Pass to work. And this is another conversation we can have that's honestly been going for an hour and a half here. So we may want to wrap this up sometime soonish and then go into that one later. Because that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? People want that constant influx of cash more than they want to get that one big bang for buck. That's why you have fighting games separated out into seasons now, right? It's not that they couldn't take the time and develop it and release all these characters at once. They could. It would increase the development time and it would take longer in the cycle to get the game out. But then you're also not getting that yearly revenue with a smaller team building on new characters and then selling it to you as an extra expansion without really adding that much more other than the new characters to the game. But with a fighting game, that's what you want. The reason you're buying it is for the characters, right? You're not buying it for the new stages. Those may be nice, but that's not the main reason you're buying the expansion pass, right? And everybody wants something like that they can rely on as income. If it's not that, it's microtransactions, right? It's new skins for your armor in Diablo 4 that cost $20, or $100 skin for $100 for a dragon gun in Apex Legends, or $40 for a blue gun, or armor or whatever. Yeah. Something that may or may not change the gameplay. You don't know until they detail out what they're talking about. And that's only going to get more common because, again, the $10 increase isn't covering their costs. It's by no means covering their new costs. And they need to show more profit. That no company works without wanting to increase their profit quarter to quarter, year to year. That's how they all work. So, do we have anything on this current topic, though, that we want to cover, or have we pretty much kind of exhausted ourselves here?
I'm just trying to think if there's any other aspect of it, but I don't think so.
We got it.
Yeah, I think we pretty well covered it, and then went into other side topics as well. But I think at this point we're gonna do everybody's kind of last check-in, and we're gonna wrap up for the night. So, Banda, what you got going on? You've been doing a bunch of streams and stuff, and I know you got a bunch of content coming up. And
yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to do is more live streams because I recognize that waiting for me to be able to finish all these storied episodes is just going to take forever. So I'm trying to do some live shows in the meantime. I'm sorry, Mike.
And we miss you.
No one misses me. Yeah,
they do. They keep shooting at you, and you're still here. So obviously they're missing.
Hey-o.
Hey-o.
So basically the big stuff for my channel will be coming towards the end of the year. I'm hoping it's 3 massively big story episodes. In the meantime, there'll be plenty of Master Debaters, which is a great podcast debate show. There'll be some Super Seducer 2, and now even some just random game streams that I play every now and then. So that's what I'm doing for now. And thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Dude, it's always a pleasure to have you on here anytime you can come on. I've been lucky that you've been able to be this regular on the show. Honestly, it's been great.
Yeah, every other week is a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I honestly, and that's about what works for us on this anyway. I know a lot of people would like it to be more often, but it gives me some time to get some other work done and then still come up with a topic before we go live so that we can mostly stay focused for the most part. I mean, we derail a little bit, but for the most part, we cover what we're going to cover.
Yeah.
So, Mike, what you got going up this week? I know you're on Rumble, you're on YouTube. I have your YouTube channel. I don't have your Rumble link on the description here yet. I need to get that done.
Yeah, and I need to add. There's a bunch of other GUG folks on Rumble that I've discovered. So once I'm going to start adding that to the GUG descriptions for people. Tomorrow night's the NLG show, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. It'll be simul streamed again, and now I've figured out I got a great tool to make to actually combine both chats to one, and that seems to work well. So, and tomorrow we've got more games to talk about that came from the showcases. We just kind of ran out of time last week, so
because there was so much good to talk about. That Xbox show was amazing.
It was, and it's not just the Xbox show. There was some great stuff that came out of Ubisoft. There was some great stuff that came out of PC show.
Honestly, it appears like it was a good week for gaming. I haven't really caught up on a lot of those. I didn't even really catch the PlayStation one. I got bits and pieces of trailers of it. And, well, honestly, there were 1 or 2 games there that looked like they were going to be pretty fun. But again, the main showcase was obviously Spider-Man 2, and while that looks fun,
I hate to be crass. Have you ever had sex and accidentally pooped all over the lady while you were doing it?
No, I've never had this problem, sir.
Because that is a far better experience than watching that god-awful, abysmal.
Now we know why you're single. You keep pooping over your partners.
Oh, I just do it on purpose.
He was on the live stream, and he literally said, if Phil Spencer and
what's up, Big Block?
I think it was Aaron Greenberg, if they both came out and just pissed into a cup, it would be better.
No, he was super disappointed on that. There was one Ninja Gaiden looking game in there that I can't remember the name of. That one looked fun. They had a sort of a cell shaded RPG that also looked pretty fun in there. That looked like it was going to be a nice. I'm kind of glad to see more kind of I need to get back into them. I'm just worried about the time sink again of the JRPGs because there's been a lot of good ones coming out lately.
Yeah,
like Tales of Arise a couple of years ago, and it looks like there's going to be a couple of them this year. They're going to be really good, and it's good to see stuff like that coming back. I feel like there's been like a hole there for a while that needed to kind of be there because there's been Western RPGs, but there haven't been a lot of Japanese styled RPGs outside of the phone games that have been coming over like Genshin Impact and stuff like that. I don't have as much interest in that.
I'll throw the Rumble.
But those are good to see. I mean, Starfield having a good showing was good. There were a bunch of other games that looked like they were popping up that were going to be really solid on the Xbox platform, and that's good. I'm glad Ubisoft had a good showing. Like I said, I got to go back up and catch up on trailers. I'm not even caught up on the Nintendo Directs and stuff like that to know what the heck's going on there. And they've been doing a bunch of stuff as well. So it's a good year so far for gaming. There's been a couple of really good releases and a lot more good stuff on the forefront.
Yeah, this year and next year are going to be very hot for gaming. A lot of the big stuff that we saw from Microsoft was 2024. So they're going to be
that's to be expected, though.
They're going to be stacked. Well, and as I've said, they're not going to put any other game outside of Forza, which they have to put in 2023. Nothing else on their big slate is going up against Starfield. They want people to play Starfield until spring, with the exception of folks who want to play Forza, and that'll be the other game for 2023. Everything else is 2024. So we've got more games to cover. I've got more. I'm desperately trying to start really plowing my way through Jedi Survivor. So I'm going to continue to stream Jedi Survivor. All of my game streams, by the way, are going to be on Rumble. Nothing but the only thing that right now is going to be on YouTube is the show. And for how long that happens will depend on Chris and Peter. But I'm not live streaming on YouTube anymore. And if you folks,
I will go on your show. If they don't want to do it, I'll be your Rumble crew.
I was about to say, I mean, we can work something out on the Rumble crew thing, but I'll be honest, your numbers on Rumble from the people I saw chiming in looked pretty similar when you're just doing your normal streams.
They're better.
They look pretty similar from like YouTube to Rumble. It didn't look like you lost much as far as the step goes. With
a smaller overall base of people on Rumble.
Yeah.
The numbers have been wild. So we played It Takes Two last night, Peter and I, because Exoprimal's open beta ended early.
I saw that. I was hanging out during some of the Exoprimal, but not really following it. I was following the It Takes Two a little bit more.
Yeah, because it ended. It basically ended UTC time, and I didn't catch that. So UTC time and Eastern time, not the same. So we ended up playing It Takes Two. The first time we played it and streamed it on YouTube, back when the game came out, I got more views last night by 150%. And I'm like, with a smaller base of people watching gaming on YouTube, on Rumble, there's this opportunity to grow, and I'm going to harness it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a priority for me, is to do some of my uploaded stuff. And either this show will probably end up getting dual stream, or this one might just move to Rumble, because I know a lot of the main audience on this particular show will probably follow it to Rumble, but a lot of the people that come to this channel on a regular basis that found this particular channel don't necessarily care for this stream. Like, I rarely ever see them here. I see them pop into comments and stuff like that and watch the other content, but I don't see them pop into the stream, right? And it may or may not be that because I have one that I'm going to be doing with Rab, which is based off the thought process that you were talking about, with a more focused podcast that I might try it on YouTube, and it may just be a Rumble exclusive as well. Because
if I could move the whole, because the numbers are, it's crazy to me. If I could move the whole damn channel to Rumble, I just would. I would just be like, buy YouTube.
I'm jealous, because I have been wanting to move to Rumble forever, but they don't have the things I need. They don't have the layout I need. They don't have end cards. A lot of the things that you get, because you're doing more live stream, which is great. Right. For someone who wants to make more storied content, it's garbage. Like, they gotta fix that crap. And I wish.
That's my worry with more of the uploaded documentary series, because some of those lean into others. Without end cards, I can't necessarily tell people that the others are there.
It's terrible. Yeah, you don't lay out. There's no playlist. There's none of that stuff.
Can you put any of that stuff in the description for them to link to?
I'm sorry.
Can you put any of that stuff in the description as like
Yeah,
a hyperlink for them to
yeah,
go to?
Yes.
So that might be a workaround in the interim until they get that stuff fixed. I don't know how you directly reach out to them to ask for any of this stuff. or who's managing that.
They have forums and stuff where they do have suggestions and
on Twitter they do.
Yeah. And I think part of it is they are they're not gaming specific, or they're not big gaming, and so they have a bit to learn about what
they seem to be streaming focused first. That's the first thing I noticed when I went to their platform is it looked like Twitch, only cleaner. It was easier to find things there than it is to find things on Twitch. But it had a very familiar layout to Twitch.
They absolutely prioritize live streams. Absolutely prioritize them.
Because trying to find uploads was a nightmare.
Yes.
Just regular uploads was not a good experience.
No.
But anybody who was live streaming was just like right there.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. And so those are things that I think, as more people go there, because I'm sorry, I don't see Kick unless they're just cash rich. I see. I mean,
all I can say for Kick is people are getting their money out of Kick early and fast. The people that can pull the numbers are getting money. I mean, and it's getting eyes on the platform. So they're willing to pay $100 million for people like Morath, who's going to go over there, who's going to pull her base off of Twitch and go over to Kick. And once they're there, they're hoping that they'll find more people they want to watch.
I would right, but
that's why they're paying. That's more why they're paying the $100 million. They're hoping that not only will it grow that person, but it'll take some of their other big people and make them even bigger people, and then people will be more apt to return there as opposed to go back over to Twitch.
Yep, and I guess my only we do. My only
I need to get Bridge Crew. That's the VR one, right?
Yes.
I have that.
It's Bridge Crew is great.
I haven't grabbed it.
I just remember that back when Ninja was the big gun, when he was the top dog, Microsoft paid him
and he still got most of his money when he went over there. I can't fault the man for doing it. And I think he went back. I think he went to YouTube after that.
He went to you, and I don't know where he is now because I think I'm not sure where he is now.
He's made a ridiculous amount of money. He may have just called it quits. I mean, he's made an idiotic amount of money. Like, I don't even see his merch anymore. I was seeing his hats everywhere for a while.
Yeah.
Like, I was seeing them at Target. That's how everywhere they were. If I'm seeing a hat for a Twitch streamer in Target, you have now saturated your market.
Yeah.
The only way you could saturate it more is if you're on like every end cap at Walmart.
Yeah,
but I have a VR headset. Why wouldn't I use a VR headset for it?
Yeah.
I already have a VR headset. It's not like I'd have to go out and buy a VR headset. I already have one.
But it's good to know for those who don't.
Yeah, it's good to know that you don't have to have it. But I mean, if I have it and I could do that experience and it's a better experience for it, then why wouldn't I do it?
All right, he's still doing YouTube, but he also just put up a video yesterday about why he left Twitch for Kick.
Okay, so he's probably doing a mix of both then, because I know
people are very angry at Twitch.
Twitch honestly just did some sort of like 70-30 split thing. Then we could talk about this offline because I don't want to bore everybody here because they didn't give a crap about streaming right now.
Nick, what I can tell you real fast about your platform is that something to try for people like us is actually Odyssey. Odyssey is a far better platform for people like us that are not live streaming. So that's something to consider. It has playlists. It has a layout. It's got all that stuff. Good stream quality, you name it.
What is it?
Odyssey.
I've heard of that too.
You should try it, Mike. I mean, I don't think it shouldn't be your priority. I think Rumble should be your priority, but it can't hurt you.
No.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Rab on this one. I don't think poaching posse of creators is a working model for any of these platforms. Just save money and go after smaller creatives with the artistic tools that you can offer. And but you got to getting some of the people that aren't like doing $100 million deal with somebody like, was it QXC or whatever he's called, and Amorath, who's the only one I can think of it to pronounce. And having them come over there is kind of one thing. Hey, Scrambles. And I can understand trying to pull some of those that are like smaller and maybe, do $500,000 deals or something like that for somebody who's like mid range, but still gets like 500, 600, 700 people in a stream at a time, right? Like some of these people, they're pulling over there giving $100 million deals. They got like 10,000 people in stream at a time or more, right? They're just stupid amounts of people that come in to watch these things, So, and I understand wanting to have that many people in a stream at one time, but most of those people are only there for that person. Whereas if you get somebody that has like somewhere between 300 and 600 that comes in there, they're probably going to be more apt to check more, being a little bit more curious about what else is there. I feel like they're not the fanatical, I follow this one person anywhere, right? Because they're going there and they're watching her. That's why they're there. They want to see her and whatever she does.
Right.
And they don't care about the rest of the platform. Otherwise, they'd still be over at Twitch watching stuff there. And they're not. They went where she is, and when she's streaming, they're watching. When she's not streaming, they're probably back on Twitch watching somebody else. They're probably not exploring Kick. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. Everybody's got to do their thing, and if they feel these people are worth this amount of money and these people can make that amount of money, then great, make that amount of money. Hey, El, how you doing? Good to see you. El also streams a ton, for like retro and a little bit of modern, mostly a lot of retro, PS1, and Nintendo, SNES, etc. Yes, you caught the very tail end of the stream. I stream at a weird time for you, I feel like, too, because you're probably waking up for your morning right now, I think, because you're like is it the Philippines that you're in right now? Like you're way off me time zone wise.
Very likely 12 hours ahead.
Yeah, so probably starting the morning. So
it should be noon there.
It may be
Philippines. No, it is. I my service desk.
I may have the country wrong. I just know L's way ahead. Greeny's meantime plus 8. So probably starting your morning then. But yeah, we're about to bounce out here. We're going to call it a night. Thank you everybody for coming in, hanging out with us, and checking everything out. Obviously, check everybody else's channels out that's on the panel. Their links are in the description. And there are a lot of other people in the chat that serve your time and attention as far as checking out their content as well. You're doing yourself a disservice if you do not. So take some time, check out each other's links. You might find a new favorite streamer or channel that has some content that was something you didn't know you needed. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and happy gaming.
Play on, gamers.